Hey everyone, I'm back and I've got some really interesting stuff to talk about today. A few people on my RevDiz video talked about how 15 million players was an extreme case for Illuvium. Now, in a certain sense it is, but in this video I'm going to break down exactly why it is quite the opposite. 15 million in a 5-year plan is extremely conservative, and I will explain that to you. Alright, let's jump on into it. So you're going to want to trust me and hear what I have to say, okay? It's relatively speculative, but I have grounded it in some really interesting figures as well. If you want to see more content like this, please like and subscribe down below, and you're definitely going to want to watch to the end of this video. I've got some really interesting stuff I reverse engineered at the very end to show you some numbers that look extreme, but personally, I don't think they are, but I want to hear what you think, so definitely let me know, okay? So first, I'm just going to jump into this site. Okay, I've used one of these figures later on in the video, but I wanted to talk to you about kind of where I'm coming from this with, right? So this describes the average amount spent on video games by gamers. Okay, in my figures, I've only looked at these in-game purchase values. I've totaled them all together, and you'll see why in a second. But basically, the short of it is that an average American gamer, which I would assume will be most of the people playing Illuvium, at least to a degree, spends about $377 on in-game purchases every year. All right? So just think about that for a second. Per year doesn't really feel like that much. It's actually like $1.08 every day. So in the grand scheme of things, it is not that bad. All right. So let's jump on into it. I've rigged up a metaverse tab in my calculator, okay? And I'm gonna talk about a few really quick things. Firstly, I couldn't get the revenue for all of the Blizzard games, so I apologize about that up front. But I did get the total revenue they got for 2020, so really the other revenues don't actually matter that much for what I'm about to talk about, unless you looked at a specific game and things like that, but I'm not doing that in this video. So these are the figures of monthly active players for Blizzard, monthly active players for the Blizzard suite for all their video games, okay? And it totals about 213 million players. Now, I know this doesn't really relate to my 15 million player hypothetical in my last video, but Kieran and Aaron have made it very clear that they want to have a Blizzard-like suite of games in the future of Illuvium, and that they've also future-proofed every single one of their alluvials. This sounds ridiculous to begin with, but let me just talk you through that for a second. I've got a bit of a design background, not quite game design, but I do know many game designers. I've worked in a game design firm for a short while as well. I've got this tab here called Assets Close, and this is personal opinion, but really listen to it, okay? Hearthstone, which is a TCG game, they've made cards for all the alluvials, just for the Illuvium game. Besides game design and adding some back-end code, it really wouldn't actually be that difficult to turn those cards into the card game. And games have done it before. Riot's Legends of Runeterra, they used a lot of the artwork and skins and things they had already, chucked it into cards, put it into a game. Okay? So it's a lot closer than you might think. Heroes of the Storm, obviously they've got a lot of abilities already set up. They would need a few more for each alluvial, mixing and matching, but all the models are finished. And believe me when I say that that is the hardest part of game design, okay? The game design aspect can take a lengthy amount of time, but the assets themselves usually depend on the amount of people you have working on them. And their team is quite decent. I wouldn't call it large, but this means that they'll be able to get things done a lot faster. Now, the next one I'll look at is World of Warcraft. Not quite there, but that being said, they do have an open world setup in their Illuvium with a lot of scenery and other things. And I'll jump into that if you guys want to see it. But, well, that's just the thing. They've got a lot of this scenery set up. They would need a lot more for an MMO RPG, right? But it's also good to think that probably 50% of World of Warcraft's scenery and everything happened after its initial launch. Okay? It didn't launch with that much stuff. It's had like, I don't know how many expansions, I probably should have looked that up, but it's had about 4 or 5 expansions at least. So just keep that in mind. Call of Duty is a shooter. Obviously, there might not be heaps of guns, but I know that there are lots of different tech trees for the different weapons in the game that you can equip to your character and use in the game. So I wouldn't be surprised if they have a decent amount of the weapons set up for a possible shooter. StarCraft 2 is a real-time strategy. This one's a bit hard to talk about, but this one would probably require the most work out of all of them. That being said, it probably has the least amount of people spending inside of it, so it's not that stressful. Overwatch, for a lot of the reasons I talked about the other ones, it's probably got a great deal of the assets in terms of the abilities and things. Goes for the same for any MOBA game, like Heroes of the Storm, like I said before. And Warzone, same thing, shooter, but it typically only has 1 or 2 major maps at launch at least. So that's probably a lot closer to being created than something like just a regular shooter where you've got 10 to 15 maps. I think in terms of the character models and the guns and things like that, they have a lot of them. In terms of the scenery, they have a really great stuff at the moment, but not enough for something like a shooter. Not yet. And yeah, they link up to these total players. All right. And these are the upcoming releases, and I've linked them to some other things. You can look closely at this chart if you want, but I've used Teamfight Tactics, Axie Infinity, and Clash of Clans as a few good examples for showing some of the revenue that these things have pulled in. All right. Following that, I got the average player spend for all of these games. Now, I'll just break this down at the bottom. These figures, you don't need to look too deeply into them, right? The ones I would focus on are the APY at the bottom here, which is the APY on any given token, based on the current token price. It's dipped a bit today, so this might actually be a bit higher than it is right now. So this does change, but it's average token price from today. So if the arbitrary price changes, it doesn't actually matter because you still bought it at that price. But I digress. Okay. So if we had 5% of their full Blizzard suite, which I truly believe they could get finished in under 4 years. I know this sounds insane, but if you think about the amount of revenue and their company culture they have, I truly believe it's very possible. Okay. Feel free to correct me on that, but at least an early version or a beta of a large suite of these games could be in effect. And I know they aren't as well known as Blizzard, but lots of other suites have been taking over Blizzard's market share lately. So these numbers are actually lower than what it would have been 3 or 4 years ago. Okay, so if they had 5% of the numbers, they would have almost 18.5 million monthly active players, $600 million in annual revenue, and an average player spend per year of $33. Now, you can buy a pub meal and spend that pub meal over a year to play video games and earn money. I think you would. Okay? And the rev diz per token, on average, would be $82.60. And that's 5% of those figures. 18 million. Way above 15 million. Okay? That's a 5-year plan, but I really think that's highly reasonable. You can see the 10%, 20%, and 100%. You're at just over 100% APY on your tokens if we had the Blizzard scenario. If we actually had that. Which is getting to the extreme end. But I'm going to change your mind in a second. Alright, or I'm going to try to. Don't want to make this video too long, so this is going to be the last thing. Now, let's have a look at these first two, and then I'll delve into the last two. So just bear with me, okay? Please, I promise it'll be worth it. This 500,000 players. Now, I know no one's really asked me why I use that amount, but I think it was Aaron that actually mentioned that their newsletter has 500,000 signups. Obviously, that isn't going to convert straight to 500,000 players, but I like it as a starting point because Axie has 2 million, and when you compare the two, let's be realistic here. I think once it catches on, it will catch on. It's just a matter of when it catches on. But I think we're going to see the turning point very, very fast after launch, depending on how much people are making as well. That's why I like to use 500,000. Now, those numbers I showed you before, an average American spends 377 over a year. And if that was the case, and we had 500,000 players, you're looking at about a 1.6% APY. Still way better than the bank. Not what you were looking for, but it hasn't been considered the return a player might get. All right. So I'm going to delve into these next two bits quickly because I really want to get this video done quickly, but bear with me. Axie Infinity, these are the figures for that. It would net about a 34% APY on any given token, on the average token. It's actually more for SLP and ILV 2.0 stake, but I'll go into that. It's another video. It'd be 34% per year, which is a great APY for anyone, I promise. And this realistic player spend. Now, I went to my gameplay loop and I messed around with some numbers, and all I've done is that $377 that you would have spent on video games over the course of a year, I reverse engineered that and I turned it into if a T1 alluvial sold for $50, Axies sell for $400 to $500. So I think 50 is extremely reasonable. That's cheap Axies too. Oh no, they sell for 200. I've got it right there. Sorry. They sell for 200. So I'm being really conservative. If that was it, and you got an alluvial every day, okay, and it was $50, then your average player spend per day would be $50. All right, close to $50, as you guys can see, $48.97. All I did was I reverse fed that into my calculator, and I did that for 500,000 and 2 million players. All right, if a player made $1 a day selling alluvials that they caught, you would get 77% APY RevDis on your tokens. If there were 2 million players like Axie has, which I think is low, you would get over 300% APY. I know it sounds ridiculous, but think about what I'm telling you here. If you profited the exact same amount an average American spends on video games, the potential APY for your tokens could be close to 80%. All right, I hope you guys learned something. This is all speculative and not financial advice. Feel free to leave a comment down below. Please like the video. I really appreciate it. My channel's been growing so fast thanks to everyone. Thanks, and I hope you all have a good day. And I hope you all had a good Thanksgiving yesterday. All right, see ya.